What's up, guys? Welcome to Polarity. My name is Josh, and the battle for disclosure is heating up. This is going to be a read-through of the Wall Street Journal article that dropped, which, in my opinion, and probably many others, is a direct response to the groundbreaking tweet that Matthew Brown posted just yesterday. We went through that tweet in today's live stream. I'll make sure I leave a link to it below. Go and check that out if you haven't already, because we broke down all of it. Went through all of the cryptic stuff. I mean, there's still a lot of things that we don't quite have answers on. But when it comes to the Enochian cipher, which is the real big puzzle piece that everyone was looking at, we found not only what it means, but exactly where that picture came from. And it goes through exactly what a Borimon is, which is the name that Matthew Brown signed off his tweet with. And it's all rooted in the occult. And it's extremely interesting. It's probably going to make a lot of people reconsider how they feel about Matthew Brown, but I think you should definitely check that out because it absolutely connects to what we're going to be looking at today. So this article from the Wall Street Journal was posted pretty much within 24 hours of Matthew Brown's tweet, where he basically calls out names, companies, locations, and starts to really begin what I would call catastrophic disclosure, because it's quite clear now that there are two sides to this. There are the sides within the government that are trying to keep control of the narrative, who are likely responsible for this Wall Street Journal article. And there are the other side that are trying to push for disclosure. And it seems like the road to disclosure, you know, like the pathway that Carl Nell tried to lay out for us, it's just not happening. And he said, if this doesn't happen, we might get catastrophic disclosure. And it seems like that is exactly where we are headed. So this is the article that dropped on the Wall Street Journal, and it's titled "The Pentagon Disinformation That Fueled America's UFO Mythology. US military fabricated evidence of alien technology and allowed rumors to fester to cover up real secret weapons programs." And this is written directly beneath videos of the famous 2017 Gimbal, Go Fast, and Tic Tac videos. So we already can see what this is. This is alleging that these videos are a hoax, that these videos are not real, and that what pilots like Commander David Fravor, Brian Graves, people like Tim Gallaudet, all these things that they are seeing, just disinformation. So they're basically admitting to tricking their own military personnel to cover up secret weapons. This to me is an absolute half-court Hail Mary buzzer beater shot to try and retain control of this narrative, because with people like Matthew Brown coming out, posting things like he did yesterday, this stuff seems like it's going to explode. A tiny Pentagon office has spent months investigating conspiracy theories about secret Washington UFO programs when it uncovered a shocking truth. At least one of those theories had been fueled by the Pentagon itself. I mean, can we just acknowledge how ridiculous that statement is? Like, they really think you are stupid. A Pentagon office has spent months of rigorous investigation, and after months, we've worked out, oh, it was us. Oh, it was us. It took us months to work out it was us all along. Like, do you see how ridiculous this already is? They think you're stupid. The congressionally ordered probe took investigators back to the 1980s when an Air Force colonel visited a bar near Area 51, a top secret site in the Nevada desert. He gave the owner photos of what might be flying saucers. The photos went up on the... and the rest is hidden behind a paywall. Now, I would never give a place like this $1 of my money. But thank you to Pavel from Psychoactivo, hooked me up with the full article. And I haven't read through it yet. I purposely waited so we could do it together, so we could kind of process it in real time and see what we think. But this is going to be a big read through, guys. So strap in, get cozy, get a coffee if you need to, and let's get straight into this thing. So we're going to take off from where we were. The congressionally ordered probe took investigators back to the 1980s when an Air Force colonel visited a bar near Area 51, a top secret site in the Nevada desert. He gave the owner photos of what might be flying saucers. The photos went up on the walls, and into the local lore went the idea that the US military was secretly testing recovered alien technology. But the colonel was on a mission of disinformation. The photos were doctored. The now retired officer confessed to the Pentagon investigators in 2023. The whole exercise was a ruse to protect what was really going on at Area 51. The Air Force was using the site to develop top secret stealth fighters viewed as a critical edge against the Soviet Union. Military leaders were worried that the programs might get exposed if locals somehow glimpsed a test flight of, say, the F-117 stealth fighter, an aircraft that truly did look out of this world. Better that they believe it came from Andromeda. Now, this lines up with what we looked at the other day when we looked at the Air Force badges in that video, that there was that group in the 1980s called the Grim Reapers, I believe was the name, and that was the program for the F-117 when it was still under wraps. But remember, guys, this was the F-117 in the 80s. That was a secret aircraft, which means it was being built probably in the 70s. If it was being flown around as a secret program in the 80s, it was being built in the 70s. Maybe even started earlier. What the hell do they have now? Because as far as we know, the F-117 is still their best stealth fighter. I mean, please. This episode, reported now for the first time, was just one of a series of discoveries the Pentagon team made as it investigated decades of claims that Washington was hiding what it knew about extraterrestrial life. That effort culminated in a report released last year by the Defense Department that found allegations of a government cover-up to be baseless. So all these whistleblowers, they're just loons. They're all crazy people. Just remember, just like the Majestic 12 document read-through we said, option 1, gaslight the public. Make whoever is blowing the whistle, whoever saw anything, make them out to be a fool, a moron, discredit them, and make sure, basically just ruin their reputation. That was literally play number 1 in the Majestic Handbook. In fact, a Wall Street Journal investigation reveals the report itself amounted to a cover-up, but not in the way the UFO conspiracy industry would have people believe. The public disclosure left out the truth behind some of the foundational myths about UFOs. The Pentagon itself sometimes deliberately fanned the flames in what amounted to the US government targeting its own citizens with disinformation. I mean, isn't that illegal? At the same time, the very nature of Pentagon operations, an opaque bureaucracy that kept secret programs embedded within secret programs, cloaked in cover stories, created fertile ground for the myths to spread. You know, I think this is a half-truth. Like, there are secret programs embedded within secret programs, cloaked in cover stories. But if there's nothing to all this, why do you need secret programs and secret programs wrapped in cover stories? These findings represent a stunning new twist in the story of America's cultural obsession with UFOs. In the decades after a 1938 radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds spread panic throughout the country, speculation about alien visitors remained largely the province of supermarket tabloids, Hollywood blockbusters, and costumed conferences in Las Vegas. More recently, things took an ominous turn when a handful of former Pentagon officials went public with allegations of a government program to exploit extraterrestrial technology and hide it from Americans. Those claims led to the Pentagon's investigation. Now evidence is emerging that government efforts to propagate a UFO mythology date back all the way to the 1950s. This account is based on interviews with 24 current and former US officials, scientists, and military contractors involved in the inquiry, as well as thousands of pages, documents, recordings, emails, and text messages. At times, as with the deception around Area 51, military officers spread false documents to create a smokescreen for real secret weapons programs. So this is literally basically calling out every single government official who's blown the whistle, like Lou Elizondo, David Grush, Chris Mellon, literally anyone who's come from the government and has spoken out about UFOs. This is saying that they are all part of a disinformation campaign to cover up the next generation stealth fighter. In other cases, officials allowed UFO myths to take root in the interests of national security. For instance, to prevent the Soviet Union from detecting vulnerabilities in the systems protecting nuclear installations. Stories tended to take on a life of their own, such as the 3-decade journey of a purported piece of space metal that turned out to be nothing of the sort. And one long-running practice was more like a fraternity hazing ritual that spun wildly out of control. Investigators are still trying to determine whether the spread of disinformation was the act of local commanders and officers or a more centralized institutional program. The Pentagon omitted key facts in the public version of the 2024 report that could have helped put some UFO rumors to rest, both to protect classified secrets and to avoid embarrassment, the journal investigation found. The Air Force in particular pushed to omit some details it believed could jeopardize secret programs and damage careers. The lack of full transparency has only given more fuel to conspiracy theories. Members of Congress have formed a caucus composed mainly of Republicans, to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP in bureaucratic speak. The caucus has demanded the intelligence community disclose which agencies are involved with UAP crash retrieval programs. MAGA skepticism about the deep state further feeds the notion that the government bureaucrats have been keeping those secrets from the American public. At a November hearing of two House Oversight Committees, Representative Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, cast doubt on the Pentagon report. "I'm not a mathematician, but I can tell you that doesn't add up," she said. Well, I mean, she's not wrong. You know, and it's interesting here, they talk about like referring to them as like saying it's MAGA skepticism is like trying to politicize this. Like, I think understanding and knowing that there is a deep state is not exclusively a MAGA thing. Former Minister of Defense for Canada, Paul Hellyer, spoke about a deep state before he passed away in like 2011. Like, this isn't just some new... Deep state is not a new Trump-related thing. People have talked about the deep state for decades. The fact that this is like trying to use politics as a weapon to divide and divide and get control of this is a massive red flag. Sean Kirkpatrick, a precise, bespectacled scientist who once spent years studying vibrations in laser crystals, was nearing retirement from government service when he received the call that would change his life. By 2022, he had ascended to chief scientist at the Missile and Space Intelligence Center at the Redstone Arsenal near Huntsville, Alabama. As he sat at his desk at 6:30 one morning drinking coffee and skimming through intelligence reports that had come in overnight, his Tandberg desk phone, essentially a classified version of FaceTime, rang. It was a deputy undersecretary from the Pentagon who was putting on a tie as he told Kirkpatrick about a new office Congress ordered the department to set up to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. The undersecretary and I put together a short list of who could do it, and you're at the top. The official relayed, adding that they had settled on Kirkpatrick because he both had a scientific background and had built a half dozen organizations within the intelligence community. Is that the real reason Kirkpatrick counted, or am I the only one stupid enough to say yes? In short, Kirkpatrick had the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office up and running, just the latest in the alphabet soup of special government projects set up to study UFOs stretching back more than half a century. AARO, as it's known, operated out of an unmarked office near the Pentagon with a few dozen staffers and a classified budget. And let's not forget, right? Remember, this came out within 24 hours of Matthew Brown saying some wild shit on X, and Matthew Brown literally name-dropped Kirkpatrick as one of the key gatekeepers of this program.
When I was in USDI, I read the transcripts of Sean Kirkpatrick briefing Senator Rubio, Senator Warren, and Senator Gillibrand on the results of his investigation in his congressionally tasked AARO report. You know, I read these transcripts once and immediately knew that
Veiled threat?
No, I knew that I was now something else. I had inside knowledge into the deception of our government by elements of our intelligence community. My blood ran cold at a specific point in that transcript where Mr. Rubio is discussing the legacy program. This was a subject of direct discussion with Sean Kirkpatrick in these meetings. And based on Mr. Kirkpatrick's replies about as vague as they were, but unable to escape the truth of the legacy program, Mr. Rubio's response was, well, what the hell is the executive branch doing? Have they been running this for 60 years without congressional oversight? The process of Grush coming forward left a wake on the inside, too. People were tracking that, weren't even involved, but were able to see sort of the distortions on the inside.
Distortions of truth.
Exactly. But also, you know, bureaucracies and offices behaving weirdly. That was one of the moments that really started to convince me that this was not under our government's control.
Directly name dropped him, and he's not the only one. Jeremy Corbell has said it too. Plenty of people have said it, and it's obvious when we had all of these military personnel coming out, blowing the whistle on things they've seen, either firsthand or reports of things they've seen. And then after all of that, Kirkpatrick stood up in front of everybody and said, yeah, we have no evidence. We have no evidence of anything. The mission fell into two buckets. One was to collect data on sightings, particularly around military installations, and assess whether they could be explained by earthly technology. Amid growing public attention, the number of such reports has skyrocketed in recent years to 757 in the 12 months after May 2023, from 144 between 2004 to 2021. AARO linked most of the incidents to balloons, birds, and the proliferation of drones cluttering the skies. Okay, drones. The old drones excuse is back. I wonder where that came from. Many pilot accounts of floating orbs were actually reflections of the sun from Starlink satellites. That's the modern swamp gas. That's the modern Chinese lantern, that one. Like, who are you? Who wrote this? Some journalist who has wrote this is essentially saying some pilot out there, some military pilot, probably with thousands and thousands of hours in the sky, is essentially just being mugged off. Yeah, those pilots with thousands of hours and years of training to be a pilot, they're just seeing reflections of Starlink. They can't tell the difference. They can't tell the difference. I can, though. I'm a journalist. They are still examining whether some unexplained events could be foreign technology, such as Chinese aircraft using next-generation cloaking methods that distort their appearance. Oh, classic. Okay, so here we go. They're trying to steer the narrative to China. There he is. The man, the myth, the legend, the keeper of the gate. Sean Kirkpatrick. The office found that some seemingly inexplicable events weren't so strange after all. In one, a 2015 video appeared to show a spherical object buzzing past a jet fighter at an almost impossible speed. "Oh my gosh, dude," the pilot can be heard saying in the video, laughing. But later, investigators determined there was nothing much to see. Whatever the object was, the camera angle and relative speed of the jet had made it appear to be going much faster than it was. The pilots just don't know what they're seeing again. Those silly pilots with thousands of hours in the air and years of training, they're just silly. They're just silly. Don't worry, it's China. It's China. The officer's second mission proved to be more peculiar. To review the historical record going back to 1945 to assess the claims made by dozens of former military employees that Washington operated a secret program to harvest alien technology. Congress granted the office unprecedented access to America's most highly classified programs to allow Kirkpatrick's team to run the stories to ground. As Kirkpatrick pursued his investigation, he started to uncover a hall of mirrors within the Pentagon, cloaked in official and non-official cover. On one level, the secrecy was understandable. The US, after all, had been locked in an existential battle with the Soviet Union for decades, each side determined to win the upper hand in the race for ever more exotic weapons. But Kirkpatrick soon discovered that some of the obsession with secrecy verged on the farcical. A former Air Force officer was visibly terrified when he told Kirkpatrick's investigators that he had been briefed on a secret alien project decades earlier and was warned that if he ever repeated the secret, he would be jailed or executed. The claim would be repeated to investigators by other men who had never spoken of the matter, even with their spouses. It turned out the witnesses had been victims of a bizarre hazing ritual. This to me sounds like they're referring to like some of the whistleblowers, because I'm pretty sure people like Matthew Brown, maybe even Jake Barber, were taken to Congress to speak to people, to speak to AARO. Tim Gallaudet spoke to AARO, and they sat there trying to gaslight him and telling him that what you were seeing are just balloons. So now they're saying all these people that have seen these leaks and these documents or have seen these things firsthand are just a part of a hazing ritual. So for some reason, the military is performing hazing rituals on officers and people at the top levels of the military. That's a problem. Why? Why are you doing that? Why are you hazing your own military? Why are you trying to confuse your own military? Well, I think the answer to that is you're not. Okay, that's not true, because that's stupid. That's far more stupid than the idea that we are not alone and that something is probably interacting with us and for some reason you're not telling us. In fact, if the military is hazing and playing tricks on its own people, on its own military force, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You're meant to be protecting the country and you're playing tricks on yourself. It doesn't even make sense. I really hope, because I'm sure there are people out there who read this and will be like, well, that's all that UFO nonsense solved then. Good on you, Sean. Well done, Sean. Woohoo. I'm sure there are people out there thinking that, and that's sad. That really is sad. For decades, certain commanders of the Air Force's most classified programs, as part of their induction briefings, would be handed a piece of paper with a photo of what looked like a flying saucer. The craft was described as an anti-gravity maneuvering vehicle. The officers were told that the program they were joining, dubbed Yankee Blue, was part of an effort to reverse engineer the technology on the craft. They were told never to mention it again. Many never learned it was fake. Kirkpatrick found the practice had begun decades before and appeared to continue still. The Defense Secretary's office sent a memo out across the service in the spring of 2023, ordering the practice to stop immediately, but the damage was done. God, this is such a crock of shit, honestly. So they're saying for some reason, all of these people in the military were, as part of a project named Yankee Blue, were shown information about the United States reverse engineering alien technology, but it was all a joke. It was just all a joke. And in 2023, we tried to tell them to stop, but we tried to tell them to stop. No, you didn't. This is such a lie. It's crazy to me that this is here. Kirkpatrick came and bound the practice and tried to save the day, but it was too late. Investigators are still trying to determine why officers had misled subordinates, whether as some type of loyalty test, a more deliberate attempt to deceive, or something else. Even though this is a lie, people who are reading this and maybe not realizing it's a lie should be, I hope, but I'm sure they're not, should be thinking, well, this is a far bigger issue. Okay, if for some reason the top brass of the military are feeding lies to their own military, who are meant to be protecting the country, that's a massive problem. That's a massive problem. After that 2023 discovery, Kirkpatrick's deputy briefed President Joe Biden's Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, who was stunned. Could this be the basis for the persistent belief that the US has an alien program that we've concealed from the American people? Haines wanted to know. According to people familiar with the matter, how extensive was it, she asked. The official responded, "Ma'am, we know it went on for decades. We are talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. These men signed NDAs. They thought it was real. The finding could have been devastating to the Air Force." I mean, I'm actually kind of a bit blown away at this. This is crazy. All the people who have come out over the years. Bob Jacobs, Bob Hastings, Phil Schneider, Bob Lazar, a lot of Bobs, John Lear, Dan Burrish, Robert Dean, Wendell Stevens, Ryan Graves, Commander Fravor, Jake Barber, Matthew Brown. They're all just victims of a trick. But thanks to Sean Kirkpatrick, we found the trick. What a joke. The service was particularly sensitive to the allegations of hazing and asked that AARO hold off on including the finding in the public report. Even after Kirkpatrick had briefed lawmakers on the episode, Kirkpatrick retired before that report was finished and released. In a statement, a Defense Department spokeswoman acknowledged that AARO had uncovered evidence of fake classified program materials relating to extraterrestrials and had briefed lawmakers and intelligence officials. The spokeswoman, Sue Goff, said that the department didn't include that information in its report last year because the investigation wasn't completed, but expects to provide it in another report scheduled for later this year. Look forward to that. The department is committed to releasing a second volume of its historical record report to include AARO's findings on reports of potential pranks and inauthentic materials. And I'm sure we all remember just how after Sean Kirkpatrick got booted out of AARO because he was obviously a gatekeeper, then John Kozlowski came in and he did that hearing. Remember how Susan Goff was looking at him the whole time? Kirkpatrick investigated another mystery that stretched back 60 years. In 1967, Bob Salas. Wow, okay, that's another Bob that I forgot to include before. I feel like they're about to try and discredit Bob Salas and his sighting. In 1967, Bob Salas, now 84, was an Air Force captain sitting in a walk-in closet-sized bunker, manning the controls of 10 nuclear missiles in Montana. He was prepared to launch apocalyptic strikes should Soviet Russia ever attack first, and got a call around 8 p.m. one night from a guard station above. A glowing reddish-orange oval was hovering over the front gate, Salas told Kirkpatrick's. A glowing reddish-orange oval was hovering over the front gate, Salas told Kirkpatrick's investigators. The guards had their rifles drawn, pointed at the oval object appearing to float above the gate. A horn sounded in the bunker, signaling a problem with the control system. All 10 missiles were disabled. Salas soon learned a similar event occurred at other silos nearby. Were they under attack? Salas never got an answer. The next morning, a helicopter was waiting to take Salas back to base. Once there, he was ordered never discuss the incident. Salas was one of 5 men interviewed by Kirkpatrick's team who witnessed such events in the 1960s and 70s. While sworn to secrecy, the men began sharing their stories in the 90s in books and documentaries. Kirkpatrick's team dug into the story and discovered a terrestrial explanation. What a shock. The barriers of concrete and steel surrounding America's nuclear missiles were thick enough to give them a chance if hit first by a Soviet strike. But scientists at the time feared the intense storm of electromagnetic waves generated by a nuclear detonation might render the hardware needed to launch a counterstrike unusable. To test this vulnerability, the Air Force deployed an exotic electromagnetic generator that simulated this pulse of disruptive energy without the need to detonate a nuclear weapon. When activated, this device placed on a portable platform 60 feet above the facility would gather power until it glowed, sometimes with a blinding orange light. It would then fire a burst of energy that could resemble lightning. The electromagnetic pulses snaked down cables connected to the bunker where launch commanders like Salas sat, disrupting the guidance systems, disabling the weapons, and haunting the men to this day. But any public leak of the tests at the time would have allowed Russia to know that America's nuclear arsenal could be disabled in a first strike. The witnesses were kept in the dark. To this day, Salas believes he was party to an intergalactic intervention to stop nuclear war, which the government has tried to hide. He is half right. The experience left the octogenarian deeply skeptical of the US military and its ability to tell the truth. There is a gigantic cover-up, not only by the Air Force, but every other federal agency that has cognizance of this subject, he said in an interview with the Journal. We were never briefed on the activities that were going on. The Air Force shut us out of any information. I mean, I want to know what Bob Salas has to say about this. This is crazy to be coming out one day after what Matthew Brown said. It doesn't make sense to me why would they need to do this with them in the base? Or why wouldn't you put people in the base who are cleared to know about it so they understand what's happening during the test? Because what if if they were testing if this thing worked, what if they tested it, it didn't work, and Bob Salas freaked out, thought it was Russia, and launched the missile? Like this, I don't buy this shit at all. You don't test weapons on someone who is guarding the red button. Like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. This guy has the ability to launch a nuclear weapon, and you're going to go and play a little trick on him. Let's try this hyper advanced weapon on the guy who could launch a nuclear missile if he thinks the wrong thing is happening. What a load of shit. Concealing the truth from men like Salas and deliberate efforts to target the public with disinformation unleashed within the halls of the Pentagon itself a dangerous force, which would become almost unstoppable as decades passed. The paranoid mythology the US military helped spread now has a hold over a growing number of its own senior officials who count themselves as believers. Wow. Gaslighting all the top brass of the military as just being victims of a psyop and paranoid UFO believers. The crisis grew to a boil over a piece of metal mailed to a late-night radio host in 1996, which the sender said they had been told was part of a crashed spaceship. Wow. This is honestly shocking. Like, this really is desperate. This is a desperate attempt to keep control of the narrative. Gaslighting your own country's military, senior officials basically saying they're all just a part of a hazing ritual. It was all just a trick. It all got a little bit out of hand. The superhero Sean Kirkpatrick luckily got in and saved the day at 2023. Tim Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, all of them. They're all just victims. They're all just, unfortunately, misled and misunderstood. Okay, if that's the case, why? Why are you hazing your own military? Why are you playing tricks on the people who are protecting your country? Why are you setting off giant red orbs next to a guy who can launch nuclear weapons? Oh, and not to mention, okay, so you had this red orb technology in 67 when this thing with Bob Salas happened? I mean, that's essentially what you're saying, is that you had EMP technology in 1967. I think we already knew that through whistleblowers, that they've been dabbling with electromagnetic technology for a long, long time. But this, even though a lot of this is a lie, this is at the very least admitting that, you know, to try and cover their ass, they're going like, oh, the red orbs in 1967, they were us. What about the Foo Fighters? What about all the Foo Fighters that were following your planes in World War II? Just a hazing ritual? Just something to mess with the pilots? Because I know if I was fighting a war and I was sending out pilots to go and fight for my country and my people, I might play a few tricks on them. Maybe put up a few orbs next to him, give him a little bit of a hazing, little elbow in the ribs. What a joke. What a joke this article is. I feel sorry for anyone out there who reads this and doesn't understand the context that we understand and where this comes from, the history that's coming, why this is surfacing now. Matthew Brown, AARO, the hearings that we have had. This is wild, guys. This is a counterpunch to Matthew Brown's post, and by no means do I think this is going to be the last. I think things are about to heat up big time. I mean, not just with this, but with what's going on between Elon and Trump. Matthew Brown's post was kind of reaching out to Elon. I mean, if those two guys side up, I don't know what that means other than it's going to get very interesting and very, weird. If you haven't seen it already, make sure you go and check out the live stream that we did today. It's about an hour and a half. We dug deep into Matthew Brown's post and all of the Enochian magic and stuff that it contained. I know, it sounds crazy and it sounds wild, but like I said, guys, we're going to have more on this. We're going to be keeping you up to date with everything that's going on in the weird world that we live in right now. Guys, thank you for all your support. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're looking after yourself. Stay safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next one.
Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light.